Okay, we'll call the October 15th regular board meeting of Lowell Light and Power to order. If you would do roll call, Charlie?
All right, Chairperson Beecham.
Here.
Vice Chair Fonger.
Here.
Board Member Crawford.
Here.
And then Board Member Cadwalder and Board Member Schrauben are currently absent.
I would entertain a motion to excuse their absences.
So moved.
Supported.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes. Any changes or anything?
No, sir.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the, approve the agenda.
So moved.
Supported.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes from the September 17th regular board meeting.
Move to approve the minutes from the September 17th regular board meeting.
And I support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Safety moment.
All right, so Ryan is going to tackle the safety moment. The topic is in work world, and probably the most common source of injury. So with that, Ryan, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, slips, trips, and falls can happen just about any place. I mean, not just at work, at your home. Leaves are there, it's wet. Who knows what's going on around where you're walking. You just always have to be paying attention constantly at all times. I mean, we're climbing in and out of equipment, up and down out of work areas. I mean, Perry, you get in and out of your job trailer all the time. You're getting in and out of the pizza truck. I mean, it's just slips, trips, and falls can happen in just a moment's notice. You always got to be careful. I mean, Craig, I just heard you talking about jumping up on the stage. I mean, that stuff, you just got to always be thinking, just be super careful at all times. Wear the right shoes and keep an eye on things. I mean, it could be as silly as a dog log out in the yard that you could slip in. I mean, that stuff happens. So just be aware and be careful out there.
Yep.
I had I have like a tackle bag. You know, when we get stuck in the river, I have this little tackle bag. I was late to something, so I was running up my stairs and I got like a step and a half up, and the tackle bag had caught around the handrail. And if you had a video of it, it just looked like I got punched in the face by a ghost, because I was full speed, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh no, and I just went backwards and everything exploded. And I just tucked and rolled down the driveway for a little bit.
It literally happens.
Happens all the
It
time.
literally happens every day with me. With something, you know. Today I'm working, putting the floor in, and I've got a little vibrating saw undercutting the door jambs, and all of a sudden, kaboom! What the heck? Inside the door, the homeowner had a little speaker on top of a shelf, and it vibrated off and hit me on right in the back of the head on the neck, and you're going like. Didn't knock me out, but it hit. Yeah. I'm going, what the, you know, it's.
It can happen anywhere, anytime, any place, and there's a reason why slips, trips, and falls are such a focus of all safety programs. It's just a piece of it.
I just don't see where that ladder is a problem.
Yeah, that middle on the bottom. Who doesn't do that? Come on. That what it is, Casey?
Yeah. Smaller feet.
Yeah, he needs smaller feet.
Okay, yep, it's
Thank you, Ryan.
happens daily to some of us. Moving on, public comment. We really don't have any public here. Moving on then to action items. And geez, we got Matt first on the list, so, you know, here we go.
All right, I will do a quick introduction. This is Matt with Vredebeld Hefner. As I mentioned earlier, Peter, who has done our audit for many years, has retired. Matt has been part of their team. I'm not sure how long you've worked on our audit, but I know I've seen your face at least a couple of years. But Matt's very familiar with us. We enjoy working with him, and he's going to take care of the presentation this year. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Thank you. I'm just gonna go over a couple quick things, with the audit report.
And sorry, before you jump in, I apologize for interrupting. We have some paper copies here. If anybody wants paper copies, the digital copy is in your board packet, though. I'm gonna snag one paper copy for myself to keep, but if somebody wants it, so now we can hand it.
It sits in my desk and then.
Look at it now and then put it back.
So just past the table of contents is the audit opinion. And there's just a couple sentences I wanted to point out on that. The second from the bottom is the responsibility of management for the financial statements. And that says that management's responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the statements. They're also responsible for developing a system of internal controls, and throughout the year, staff is recording all the transactions. They're doing all the work to make these financial statements, and then my responsibility as the auditor is to obtain some reasonable assurance that those financial statements are accurately presented in accordance with accounting standards. And we do this through sampling and analytical testing. We certainly don't look at every single transaction. If we were to do that, it'd be another 9-10 months before I could come give this presentation. So we're doing some sampling, we're doing some getting some evidence just to make sure everything is fairly stated. And that is at the end of the day what our opinion is that the statements that we're presenting tonight are fairly presented in accordance with accounting standards, and everything is following the standards as they should. And then kind of just in general for the statements, the income statement, for the year, your net position was up about $1 million. This was, Charlie could certainly talk more about that, but I mean, some of that was, just cost of power was a little more favorable this year. There was a consumer's rebate that was being recognized over 7 years, and it just, in talking with the manager, it was something that should just be written off this year, which took down that increase a little bit. But certainly nothing that is out of the, I mean, concerning or showing any sort of accounting errors. And then the last thing I wanted to go over was there's a separate letter, and that kind of just is our letter where we kind of have that opportunity to present any concerns, comments that we have. And on the second page, right there, we don't have any comments that we needed to add. And then one other item I wanted to kind of point out was on the first page that there's a paragraph about corrected and uncorrected misstatements. And this is where we would say if there's any entries that we had to do that were significant, and we did not have any entries that we needed to do, nothing that we needed to disclose to you. So it was a very good audit. Staff did an excellent job of getting everything prepared, and everything was very smooth on our end.
I mean, a couple things I did want to just highlight real quick. As Matt mentioned, the consumer's rebate that was associated with the regulator station, and originally there was an opportunity to have that amount rebated back. It was originally being expensed over 7 years because that was the rebate window. It became abundantly clear that we were never going to touch that, materially touch that rebate. The amount of operations we'd have to, the amount of time we'd have to operate the turbines would be so significant that ultimately it was recognized that rebate wasn't going to happen. So we worked with the auditors to just go ahead and finish representing that expense. Part of it was timing. We did have an elevated net income this year. It was a total of, I think, an expedited roughly a little over $100,000 in remaining balance, but it just creates an abnormal situation for us. So when we work with UFS to update our long-term financials, we have to make sure that those non-cash transactions are backed out of cash flow models, and it cleans things up quite a bit. It no longer was serving the purpose that it was originally intended to serve. So we thought we would just take that opportunity to go ahead and clear that off the books at a more advantageous time when that net income was a little more elevated. So that will, and I will also bring that up because that will reflect in this current year's budget. This was something that was done just from a timing perspective. Our FY25 budget was developed, approved by the board, and then the audit happens. So we factored that entire expense into the current year budget, but ultimately will not recognize that this year. It was all recognized in fiscal year 24. And the other thing I'd like to just highlight is it's an oddball thing. You won't see it in here, or it's not, you'll see it, but normally we do, or every year we do a GASB 68 entry, which is a recognition of change in pension liability. And normally that's a fairly significant expense. This year it happened to be a credit, which I think is the first time I've ever dealt with a GASB 68 entry that was a credit. But we had some things that were just slightly abnormal this year, or not something that you consistently see.
Okay. I would like to just for public record note that Andrew's here at 6:06, right at the beginning of our audit.
Sorry for being late.
No, that's fine.
How many years were left on that?
On the,
Rebate.
it was 1 year left.
For 1
It
year?
was FY25 was going to be the last year to recognize it. So we took the opportunity to clear the books. I think in total, we received less than $5,000 in rebates. They're so small, I honestly don't even remember. Casey, I don't know if you've got a number off the top of your head. It was immaterial, what we've received back. And it came down to the volume that would have had to go through the generators to realize that credit, or a material portion of that credit. I think one other thing I wanted to briefly mention, I don't know exactly where it is in here, but there was an adjustment to prior year balance, and that was just a reversal of a asset retirement obligation associated with Campbell, the retirement of Campbell. It was discovered that we were carrying an asset retirement obligation on our books that was ultimately be carried on MPPA's books. So it was being carried twice. I don't know if I captured that 100% accurately, but I did want, it's another thing that's just a little more abnormal that I wanted to bring to the board's attention.
Like 60 grand, 61 grand.
Okay. So Matt, I really like this, but I will tell you that there are a few that are probably disappointed because there's no charts or flow charts or.
You walk in and you're in the crosshairs immediately, Andrew.
Because we've had those before, had nice colorful charts in here, and there is none. So anyway, embrace change.
Stuff to have to go in and give bad news. You ever have to do that?
It's not always good, but
Yeah.
it is what it is, and
So
the people in charge need to know, and that's what we're here for.
So the one question that I had, and It's not necessarily your responsibility or anything, but it's always, we always kind of like to hear, because understandably, you do many other audits with other electric companies. And are we above average, average? Are we, you know?
I think you guys are set up very well financially. I mean, you guys are keeping a good, healthy fund balance or net position so that you are, situated where you can maneuver as you need to in what is certainly a changing environment.
It's good to hear. Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept the audit presentation.
So moved. Supported.
It's been moved and supported. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Now you can stick around or you can get the heck out of here.
But gotta get home to I got an 18-month-old
All right,
and a 7-week-old.
I was gonna say, I heard that you were doing our audit the week your second was born.
The week after.
The week after, that's what it was, yeah.
congratulations. We look forward to many continued audits from your firm.
We hope to be of service.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
Second action item, second amended and restated power purchase commitment authorization with Hart Solar.
All right, so I'm happy to go into whatever details the board would care to dive into, but I feel like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit when we talk about all the various PPA amendments. This is abnormal. This is very much a post-COVID world outcome at this point. We've got another amendment. Quite frankly, if we don't sign it, then the project will fall apart. What I thought I'd do is just highlight some of the significant changes. But obviously of biggest, I guess every negotiation is trade-offs. The big driver coming from the developer side is the price. The price just was not at a price point that would ultimately lead to a project that cash flowed for them. So from their perspective, an updated and increased price was absolutely essential to bringing this project to the grid. So the new PPA includes approximately a 32% price increase. Of importance there, it is still approximately 15% below market rate for other available projects in Michigan. So as much as that 32% increase hurts, it's still better than seeking out an alternative project, or it's still better than taking the development securities and applying the development securities against another project. Because that's ultimately what some of those development securities are for, is if that doesn't come to the grid, we can take those securities and apply it to another PPA. But at 3.6 million, it just doesn't pencil out to let to collect those damages and carry on. So obviously the first big thing is the price. This agreement does provide significantly greater financial assurances and financial guarantees. It goes from 3.6 million in essentially financial guarantees to 9 million in financial guarantees. So that does indicate a significantly increased confidence level and that the development or the project will ultimately come to the grid. It does extend the commercial operation date from approximately June 1st to 2025 to December 1st, 2026. So it's about an 18-month delay. But one of the nuanced details is this amendment gives a guaranteed COD date instead of a target COD date. And COD date is redundant. It's really just COD. Sorry, I'm good at that. Other than that, There's some very advantageous, I would say, don't call them make whole provisions, but some replacement capacity. Again, solar is not accredited at the highest degree of capacity, but we are counting on the capacity from this offtake as part of our overall capacity position. So included in this deal is replacement capacity for next summer and fall season at a below market rate, which is a win for us. And ultimately, if the project doesn't come to the grid or is ultimately fails, the following planning year, there is replacement capacity at no cost to Lowell Power. So again, on one side of the scale, you've got the price increase. On the other side of the scale, you've got replacement capacity at below market value, significant increases in financial guarantees. Those are the two big things. And then again, obviously on the other side is that extended COD date. So happy to answer any questions, but again, we've been through kind of all the background and what's leading to these numerous times. But again, it's the same causes. It's labor, it's tariffs, it's supply chain, it's labor. The big holdup in this one's in the EPC contractor realm, which is the engineering, procurement, and construction contractor, kind of soup to nuts contractor. That's still not 100% nailed down. So while there's clearly a significantly increased confidence level in this project, I don't want to, it's not a done deal at this point. And there's still opportunities for hurdles to ultimately materialize that result in this project never actually being built.
I mean, you think the issue is that they can't find someone to build it?
I know that's the issue. They don't. The labor market in
And that's
Michigan,
just because construction's crazy, and there's all kinds of good projects out there that maybe have better returns for construction companies or more suited. Or
I don't know exactly the nuts and bolts behind that. That's the developers kind of MPPA, I will say, is getting more engaged with the developer in trying to uncover and delve deeper into what those issues are to help adjust, from a risk perspective. But yeah, I mean, at this point, with new legislation that changes the supply and demand dynamics immediately, and labor market's already challenging in Michigan. So EPC contractors are struggling to find the labor force to build the projects. They're struggling to compete amongst themselves from a wage standpoint. So
yeah.
The labor market's thin and the opportunities are heavy with the legislation. So you got things pulling in both directions that neither of them are the direction that results in something favorable on our end.
It's like it's put more of a crunch on renewables.
Yes.
Being like the target date, meaning the target percentage and target date of what we have to get to.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
My one question would be, what is the percentage of renewable energy that this will go towards our, I mean, is it?
I'll in a roundabout way answer. I don't necessarily have that math converted, but as it fits into, I'm trying to scroll down to where it's a little longer. So Lowell Power's piece of this project is relatively small. It's under a megawatt. It's 900 kilowatts. It's a piece of a diversified approach. And as you look at the evolution of our power supply, heavily invested in Campbell and Bell River. And as we layer in these new contracts, there's diversification in fuel resources that you want. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of solar. There's not a lot of wind coming online. So we're limited in our ability to diversify in fuel source. So what we're also diversifying against with solar is geographic location, and how they interconnect. There's a few different areas that you can diversify within solar. So this is a small percentage of our our overall renewable portfolio, but I'd be happy to get you some math.
Well, I'm just again, the Grand Rapids Press, had a big article about renewables and different things and what the year, where we have to be in 2036 and beyond. And obviously this would be, whether it's another 1%, 2%, 5% or whatever. I mean, by law, we have to, if it comes to fruition, I mean, that's where the law has been set up. And that's not to say that the law doesn't change because of having renewable energy is a good thing. How we get there is a difficult thing right now. And just want to make sure we're still projecting and moving forward to do the best we can to get to that number.
So that's a bigger conversation, and happy to dive into it just briefly, real quick. And I just did some quick back of the napkin math. This is about 1.5% to 2% of our over. It should be probably a little slightly under 2%, but it's going to be about 1.5% of our overall load will come from this. You're absolutely right. We've had numerous conversations about the new renewable and clean energy standards, but you're absolutely right. By 2030, we have to be, I'm going to draw a blank now. I've got it right here, actually. 2030, we're 50% renewable. By 2035, we have to be 60% renewable and 80% clean. And there's some nuanced differences between renewable versus clean energy. There's certain resources that count as clean energy that are not renewable. But yes, as far as this is absolutely a piece of our compliance strategy. More of how this fits into our overall compliance strategy will be determined through the development of our renewable energy plan, which we're actively working with MPPA to develop. I mentioned in my manager's report, I'll jump ahead a little bit. We're working with MPPA on that renewable energy plan. Their goal is to have plans delivered to each member community by the end of the calendar year. As long as all pans out in the desirable timeline, I would anticipate presenting our initial renewable energy plan to the board in January and request approval in February. And then without having the dates directly in front of me, I believe it's February 21st of next year. We have to submit our renewable energy plan to the MPSC for compliance purposes. But in that plan, we will lay out all the resources that we plan to use to meet each incremental standard along the way, and how we kind of carry on in perpetuity. Obviously, that plan is subject to change. So there are requirements to update that plan every 2 years after or when there's material changes, but really it's about every 2-year update to that plan that'll have to happen as new projects come online, projects are delayed, things will materialize differently than how we plan them. But the plan is ultimately a directionally correct plan and a precisely incorrect plan.
So what's kind of a rough timeline for this? Once they break ground on it, how long does that? Like if it's December 1st, 2026, when is the point in 2026 where we go? No, they're not going to be able to get this squeezed in.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure. It's a great question. I'll follow up.
I guess I'm just curious. It doesn't.
I'm curious. That's a great question.
Just trying to figure out, like, when we consider, we're gonna have to start planning on getting paid for this not coming to market, or.
I don't know. That's a great question.
Okay. Is there any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the new power purchase commitment as presented to us from management.
So moved.
Supported.
Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. On to informational items.
All right. We'll jump right into the performance data. And again, we're starting to get a few months into the year. This is reporting through September. So you can see from a total sales, we're definitely exceeding trends. Well,
Hold on.
all right. Well, everybody's got it on there. So we're going to keep rolling through. Yours is dead, but I'll catch up with you later if you got questions. Now, performance data, again, we're starting to see some trends, but again, comparing to previous years when you had such a significant change at one of your industrial customers, you really just notice that delta. But as you dive a little bit deeper and you look at industrial sales, you really notice it. But then when you start getting into commercial, you start to see how each of those pieces make up the puzzle. Commercial is still continuing to trend right ahead of previous year. And again, that is partially attributed to a larger grow facility in our service territory qualifying for a rate that ultimately puts them as a commercial rate, but it's reported as commercial, but it's ultimately an industrial application. And then you really get into the residential, and I think this year starts to highlight the weather variability of residential. And it also, it just highlights, we talked a lot the last couple of years about residential sales kind of being all over the place and ultimately being down comparatively. And you can see this year we are trending ahead of, on a month-to-month basis, we tend to be trending ahead of last year. But you go back a little bit further and you'll see some years where we've still experienced higher total volumetric sales at the residential level, even with the increase in customer numbers. Overall cost per kilowatt hour, you're at the time of the year where the PCA is ramping up and total sales are declining. So you have fewer kilowatt hours to spread all those charges across, especially the fixed charges. And with the upward pressure of the PCA, you're seeing that average cost per kilowatt hour start to creep up this time of year. And again, that's a product of an increased PCA and also decreased volumetric sales to amortize those fixed charges across. Getting to cash levels, one thing I'll note here is as we reported last month, the new bucket truck came in right at $230,000. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. That number and that check is not reflected in these cash levels. So the equipment replacement fund does not reflect that $225,000 decrease in balance. And that's not part of it. It's just attributed to timing. The check was issued. Check was issued but hadn't cleared. And you'll see it next month reflected. But expect that, and just wanted to highlight that piece there. Again, standard charts in here. I'll highlight the PCA again. If you go all the way to the last chart, that PCA is on the increase. As I mentioned last month, part of that is just catching the summer transmission charges and the elevated charges associated with the summer loads, because there's a 2-month delay in factoring charges into the PCA due to just timing issues and making sure we have all the appropriate settlements. Additionally, we are working the significant amount of working capital that's been required for the energy services project at MPPA into the PCA calculation. And that was an enhancement of the calculation that became more important as that working capital requirement has grown fairly rapidly, very quickly. So with that, that is all I had for performance data. If anybody has any questions, and Eric, feel free to jump in if you've got any questions.
Will do.
I had one question on the electric requirements.
Yes.
The one that has like the temperature versus.
Yes.
So I noticed that it was like the first time the requirements have gone above the temperature, but I know they're not the same scale, which then got me thinking total requirements. Is there a way we can like normalize that to? I just couldn't think of a good way for customer or something like that. Because you can see it keeps increasing, but that doesn't really mean anything, right? It just means we've got more customers who are using more. It's not necessarily.
I guess my
due to
question,
less efficient,
yeah,
right? So I
my-
think this initially started as a
and that,
impact of weather on the.
and that would be my question is what do we want to get out of the chart?
Mhm.
And what's the purpose of it? What does it, ultimately, how does it help you? And
Mhm.
we can shape the chart to present that information.
Well,
But yeah, I would agree. I'll be honest, I look at this one kind of as a trend, more of just an overall kind of give me a mental snapshot. What are for me, it's really, what are the outliers?
Yes.
And is there anything abnormal when it comes to weathers or, so for me and for staff, I'll be honest, we don't use this graph. It's more just it really just kind of paints a broad stroke for me. But ultimately, if the board would like to see it reflect something specific that provides more meaning, then that'd be something that we'd have to look into making a change to.
Well,
Yeah.
when I came to the board, we weren't doing the temperature, right? And I think I suggested that we do it and everybody agreed. But now I see that the scale just really doesn't tell us a lot.
Yeah, well, just like the blue and the red don't, the trends correlate, but the values don't.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I was kind of getting at is like what, as Charlie mentioned, what I look for is outliers. Well, the rightmost blue point is an outlier because it goes above the red, but then really it's not because.
Yeah. Well, I would say it is because it ultimately, it shows you that our load is growing outside of weather.
Well, yeah, independent, but the
Independent.
trend of the blue peak shows you that, right?
Yes.
It's not the actual blue being above the red. It's just the trend of the blue peaks relative to the trend of the red peaks is what
Yes.
tells you that we're adding load.
And that's largely attributed to a single customer. So you don't get those are
Yeah.
it happens to reflect the highest weather driven month following a significant expansion. So I guess my question, yes, I see it's an outlier, but I think it will become the new summer norm.
Yeah, well, that's what the trend is saying, right? Is that eventually the blue is always going to get into red, so to speak. But that's, again, it's because total requirements. I mean, if we were to try to get something out of it, I thought it was more like, because I think at the time the question was, are people's homes becoming more efficient? Are businesses being more efficient, in terms of their construction and how they can adapt to weather? And I don't know that like you said, I don't know that we necessarily have
I think
the data that can answer that question.
and to get that information, you would have to really adjust for heating and cooling degree days. And to be honest with you, I don't see, that's a pretty heavy lift to develop that, to really dive down to weather normalizing our
Right.
homes getting more efficient. And
I think you could look into the industry somewhere. There's somebody doing a PhD on it or something that, I mean.
no, it's done. It's just
Yeah.
a matter, and there's methodology out there. The question I would have for the board is, where does that stack up in the board's priorities? And ultimately, I've been through a lot of these charts, graphs, things like that. And I used to use a rate consultant that every year they'd add new graphs and add new graphs, and the more you tweak them, the more you forget what the purpose of them is. And I actually asked him at one point, "What are you telling us with this?" And he couldn't tell me.
So with this, and this is just my perspective, I think it's going to be logical. The warmer the days, or the higher the more power that you're going to use. My question would be, how much time does it take for our staff to put this together? And is it worth doing this? Because in generalization, I'm gonna tell you that, the colder it is, the more power that when you get real cold in the winter and the furnaces are gone, you're gonna be using electricity, and more so in the summer when the air conditioners are gone, you're gonna use a lot of electricity. I personally don't see the value of, again, when you're determining having a limited staff and our staff is doing great things, how much time do they have to put into this to get you this information, which I can pretty much tell you any day, if it's hot out, we're gonna be using more electricity. If it's cold, or if it's medium, we're not gonna be using as much electricity.
So
I think Charlie said it earlier, this is a broad brush stroke to see a trend. And I think that's it. And do we need this tool though, is what Perry is asking.
So I think this is useful just at a snapshot. And now, but it does not give you the weather impact on overall load as it's presented. That would take a much deeper analysis to
Right.
really factor in exactly how to normalize for weather and try and evaluate what is driving a per unit usage almost. So this is fair. I mean, this is an established, the data source is established, everything is established. And I don't want to say this is on autopilot, but it's part of the standard package
Right.
at this point.
Okay.
We're always open to making enhancements. I guess
Sorry.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I didn't mean to make this a huge discussion, but my original point was like, if there's a simple way to normalize it that could help, like, could we divide it by X of something that we know? But if we can't, I still think there's some value in this, right? So for example, the obvious one, there's COVID, right? And, April 2020, but
I didn't look at the date, but yeah, it's the most noticeable outlier in the whole graph.
Yep. And then the other one though is that I noticed like in June, July of 21, right? There's a big spike of the blue. And I know in the past, when we've seen big usages in the summer, the conversation was always, oh, it's really hot. Yeah, we had a hot summer. That's why it went up. But this one, it's interesting to see, well, no, it was not abnormally hot that summer. Just we must have had a customer come online who then went offline later, or there's some other story to explain that. But that's what I like about this graph, is that it will help us unpack those stories if we ever wanted to. So that one, like, to me, is sort of interesting of what happened there. I don't really, it's in the past enough that I don't think it's a big deal to go dig into, but I like having the information as something that if we do have a story that comes up in the future, that we have this to look at.
I like watching. For me, I look more peak to peak, valley to valley.
Yep.
The noise between, it's almost give me a min and a max for the year.
Yeah.
And that's what that again, it's very broad strokes at that point. But no, I personally I see value in this. But it's not going to present. It's going to present certain data. It's not going to present other, or it's going to present a certain story. It's not going to present other stories.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of making sure that the intention is matching the story that it presents. And if we want to look at presenting a different story, what data would we need? What's the process it would take to develop that? I've done some things where I've personally tried to weather normalize and tried to create value, quantify the value of energy efficient projects.
Yeah.
I found that I got close as long as you're throwing big hand grenades.
Yeah. Well,
It's
tough when it combines industrial and residential, because they're going to have different drivers of how they make themselves efficient.
Yeah.
So, like you said, I like, if we can't think of a simple, meaningful normalization, then we can just leave it as is. I just wanted to point out that it's not that suddenly we're consuming more power. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
What it tells you is we are seeing organic load growth, not
Yeah.
weather-driven load growth.
Even the valley of January of 24, December of 23, whatever that one is, right? You see a huge spike in consumption, but it's one of our warmer winters, right? So again, it's just showing that our demand is going up for other reasons than weather.
Yes, I would agree. Absolutely. But it gets difficult when you have, we are small enough in size that when you have one customer bring on over a megawatt,
Yeah. It's like 5%, right? Or,
it throws a lot out of it. You know, it really does throw a lot, not out of whack. It is so influential in the overall statistics that unless you remove that, now that might be careful what I volunteer. It'd be interesting to see if you take out like maybe even the 5 biggest customers and see what does that look like. But yeah.
Maybe one of these days we need to get like a statistics intern that's to give them all our data and say, what can you tell us that's new? We haven't learned yet. And after the summer, I'm sure they'd tell us several interesting things.
That would be phenomenal to have a math major intern or something like that. Stats to take a deeper dive. I will say that I don't think our current staff has the capacity to take a deep dive. I do think it's very much
That's what I mean. We'd have to have
internal
someone else who wants to go spend time digging and analyzing, and not our staff.
or has another benefit in it of, hey, I get college credit, I'm doing something. So no, I would agree.
But thank you for entertaining.
Yeah, I think it's got my brain thinking. It's just scary.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I like it. But yeah, that any other questions on the performance data?
Nope.
We'll roll on to the outage report, and I will hand that over to Ryan. He's going to tell you all about how sunny it was in Arizona.
It's pretty darn sunny.
You have any outages in Arizona while you were there?
Yes.
Did you really?
Power didn't go off while we were there for just a short time. Not sure why. It was a nice sunny day. It wasn't even windy, so kind of like what happens here. Anyways, our outage situation wasn't that bad last month. I mean, there was just a couple small locations. The one, unfortunately, is a repeat location where we keep having some pretty good issues. We're really looking forward to next year for possibly undergrounding this area. We're not going to let up on that. We're going to keep pursuing that option.
Which one's the repeat offender area?
Say it again.
Which one you said is the repeat offender area?
The Alden Nash and G Drive.
Okay.
That one there. There's a lot that's going to go into that, and it's going to remove a lot of overhead lines. If we can put that together, that's going to be pretty awesome to get that complete. But for the short term, we're going to continue to trim the trees politely as much as we can out there to where we don't have to really remove a lot, because knowing we're going to remove the lines, we would like to try to leave as many trees there as we can, knowing that. So, and then the other one, you can see the little note up there. It unfortunately was a tree that we would never have touched. It just happened to tip over and reached far enough to where it caused us an outage. So it's hard to prevent those.
I tell people all the time, we cut every tree that had the potential to fall on a power line. Our customers would be 3 times as mad as dealing with an outage. And
It looked like Arizona.
it would be a very, very different landscape.
I would say there's some good news there. No squirrel this month.
No squirrels.
All right.
Oh, on that note, I did see there's some poles around once in a while where there's like little tree branches that are getting to the pole, like above the squirrel guard. So I don't know. I'm assuming those are some that are eventually going to get pruned or trimmed, but
Yeah.
I saw that and I was like, man, that's kind of defeats the purpose of it.
They will
It
jump.
does. It's an avenue for a squirrel.
The squirrels will find them. You'd be amazed at how much they'll go find a triplex service, and they'll run every which way they can.
I'm assuming you're aware of those.
Oh yeah, we keep an eye on them.
Yep. Thank you.
Right, so we're on to the income statement. The only thing I really want to point out here, a couple things. Sales revenue, of course, we've talked a lot about sales revenue the last couple of years, and we've been under budget on the revenue side. We've not seen some sales materialize in previous years. We did take a slightly more conservative approach this year to try and account for kind of trends over the previous years where the load just wasn't, the overall volumetric sales were not growing at the same pace as the quantity of customers or the overall growth rate and number of customers. So we've kind of adjusted that. Again, as I mentioned, it was a hotter summer, so we did start off. So we're trending slightly ahead of budget from a revenue standpoint. Do want to bring to your attention, and I have to correct myself from last month. Last month I said, a lot of that generation expense was tied into just projects that hadn't happened. And while that is true, the bigger driver there is the regulator station that is included in the budget this year. That last year of expense, it's included in the budget, but we went ahead and finished out that expense during the audit process. So I do fully expect to see generation expense finish under budget this year. But again, that was a non-cash entry, but it will, I'll probably mention it another 7 times or so approximately this year. It's just going to keep growing. It's about $10,000 a month. So to kind of normalize that value, it's not quite that, but we're 3 months in here and 39,000 under budget without really going in. I'd have to say probably 27, 28 of that is tied into the regulator station expense that's not hitting here. Purchase power expense is slightly over budget, but again, that's the summer is very lumpy when it comes to charges. That's largely driven by transmission expenses and certain charges that just ramp up in the summer with higher loads. Overall, net income ultimately came in slightly better than budget this current month, and over the course of this fiscal year, 3 months, we're in a very healthy position from an income statement standpoint. But again, I'll remind the board that that generator, the regulator station, will ultimately materialize in that net income as well. So I would say the adjusted total budget is probably closer to $675,000 in positive net income. And a lot of that is driven by our need to funnel cash, to generate enough operating cash to continue to expand our capital budget and increase some of our capitalization and distribution projects to rebuild the system and do voltage conversion. Any specific questions on the income statement? I guess the one last thing I'll highlight that I think is great to highlight is that interest income. We hear a lot about the Fed's thinking about lowering interest rates. I want to just continue to take advantage of the favorable interest rate environment as long as we can. We have some longer term investments tied up in mortgage-backed securities that were a legacy. Steve had found those, and they do have good returns, but a lot of our shorter term investments are in the 4.5% to 5.5% range. And we continue, again, we budgeted conservatively there, not knowing when and how fast that we would see changes in the interest rate environment. But it does look like coming off a higher than expected inflation report, the market is starting to back out some of the back off some pricing in some future interest rate reductions. So we're really hoping to be able to continue to take advantage of that favorable environment for a little while longer. And then Megan and I will look to continue to maybe tie, as interest rates drop, maybe tie up things in a little bit longer window, but ultimately still have sufficient liquidity to address any major issues that come up. But that's a good story to tell. We're doing really well, and ultimately that's to the benefit of the customer, taking advantage of that interest income.
I have a question.
Yes.
And it's a question for Eric. Again, Lowell Light and Power's enterprise fund. The city has enterprise fund in their water and sewer. Do you get any kind of reports like this? That, you know, showing monthly reports of where your budget stands and everything?
No,
Okay, thank
sorry
you.
to say.
Didn't you, they used to for the wastewater.
We get a monthly budget report, but it's not broken,
Not that deep.
not detailed.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you which enterprise fund.
Okay.
Good roll on. All right, we'll get to capital projects. Again, we've talked about capital projects. Happy to answer any questions, but if you go to the summary page of this one, you see kind of this month's current spend, capital equipment. We had transformer order come in, correct, Ryan? I think some overhead oh, you were out last month, so I'd say it was the overhead units came in. You see the work that we've been working, you see the work that's been done, Stony Bluff and Harvest Meadows, reflected in the system expansion budget. Remind the board that some of that will be ultimately come back to us and be credited against that work order. We have a aid to construction policy that ultimately determines how long or how much money we'll contribute to bring any new service on to the grid, and anything in excess of that with a modifications to the formula for unique situations like developments. So we'll charge that to the customer and ultimately they'll have a contribution for those projects as well. Any questions on the
Yes,
capital budget or capital projects?
so the IT related projects,
Mhm.
is that strictly what our share is, the 80,000, or is that a combine of what? Because the IT projects in the past have been a joint venture.
They are a joint venture, and I would have to ask Megan. I don't know if we'll put you on the spot a little bit, but this would be a question for Megan. I'm pretty sure I know how invoices are being approved and everything is being credited against that work order. Ultimately, we will invoice this. We kind of handle the initial invoicing, initial paying of invoices, and then we invoice the city, and that money is credited back against this work order. So seeing that we are over budget already, I would say that is the total sum of projects, knowing that we have more projects that we haven't done yet. So I'm out on a limb a little bit, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
As our responsibility is that total of $1,920, or is it 50%? Or is it some number in between there?
It's a number in between. It's a calculated number. There are and Mike and I work really well together, determining what the appropriate split is. We're yet to have a disagreement, which is nice. But there are certain things that we split 50-50. If it's ultimately to stand up the network, there's other pieces that are based on prorated share, computers. If it's a computer driven expense, if the city has 60% of the total computers, then they cover 60% of those charges. Same with phones, same with everything that we do. We try to find the most appropriate cost sharing so that neither entity is paying any more or any less than a fair share. We try to find just that appropriate break even, and any cost sharing is discussed directly between Mike and I, and it's worked out really well on how we split those costs and really driven down the total expense for both parties by sharing in those expenses. And that is the capital projects report. No other questions? Boy, we're rolling along. I'm gonna put Ryan on the spot a little bit. To be fair, Zach was not able to make it tonight. Zach pulled this report together, but I will put Ryan on the spot and see if he has anything to add here. If not, Ryan, obviously, you're welcome to stand on your report.
The tree trimming item A there, kind of a barn. IPC flies their lines with a helicopter every year and just go check for things. They felt that the trees were way before us. When we flew the bucket truck up there to actually cut them down, they were closer than what you would want, but they still had lots of room to be able to grow, because this was so big area that we're planning to remove a lot of trees. We've been talking about it for several months now. We just are so busy, we just haven't made it out there, but they were not gonna cause any kind of an outage, but we did take the ones that were an immediate threat according to ITC out, just to make sure they were happy, and then, we're gonna go back out there and do a lot more. We've already communicated that to the customers, so we just have to get back out there. Item C, that 208 blank, pretty interesting catch that they were able to find a, suicidal mouse in one of our cabinets that caused this outage. Pretty interesting.
We didn't include those pictures. There were pictures shared throughout the company though.
See those?
I'll track them down.
That's pretty neat.
Show it to you afterwards.
We're gonna make a slight adjustment if we can within the protective relays at the substation, so that they actually say miles instead of kilometers, because it was a little tricky to determine how far away from the substation this happened, given that it's kilometers. So we're gonna try to make that change here in the future to help things out.
Okay. I was wondering about the kilometers versus feet. I was like, that's a big difference, but kilometers, miles, I get it.
Yep. And it was several miles from the substation if you add it all up, so it makes a big difference. Yeah, that's about all I would have to add to that.
I want to pause just a second, talk a little bit more about that. I thought it was neat. Casey, in the power of data and using data and the tools we have available to us, you imagine finding a mouse in a circuit. That circuit starts obviously at substation and ultimately ends somewhere up around your house. Beyond, actually, obviously, trying to find a mouse in that. It's literally worse than a needle in a haystack. But Casey was able to dig into the actual waveforms and look at the events recorded at the substation. And I think Casey, I don't know how close you were, but I sat down with him and said, "Hey, show me these files. I'm fascinated by this. Tell me what this story tells you." And I think he pinpointed it to the piece of equipment or one, I don't know if it was the specific piece of equipment, but it was within probably a stone's throw. He said, "Well, I think it's here. It's going to be on the other side of the river, potentially in the step down transformer." I think it was the switchgear before the step down, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Right next to it.
yeah.
So,
Well, and I have to credit the protective relay, and the protective relay that, monitors, voltage and current on the circuit, does provide a calculation based on the amount of current from the fault, the voltage drop. It can give an educated guess on distance from the relay where that fault is. And using that information, looking at the waveform of the fault and the magnitude of the current, we knew it wasn't like a high resistance tree branch or something like that. We knew it was a very direct contact from phase to ground. So thinking through that, we knew it was either a failed piece of equipment or an animal somewhere. It helped us pinpoint where to look.
it was great teamwork. It was nice to marry together the operations side, the engineering side, and ultimately our customers win, because it gives Ryan the opportunity and Zach the opportunity to say, "All right, we can make a change. We can better use the tools that we have." And that comes after you dig into it and you really understand the full scope of what happened. So I just appreciate everybody working together on that one. And it's a really good story to tell.
So what made Jared so good at the VR simulator?
He plays a lot of video games, apparently.
It has to be that way. It was pretty remarkable. guy said that he did it, it took him like 15 minutes to do this operation that the guy before him took over 2 hours to do. It was just like, just zipped right through it and looked like a rock star doing it. It was pretty neat.
I didn't, so one, I don't miss many safety meetings. That was a Friday. I don't remember what else we had going on. There's something else that it was like a makeup, but it was, I really was interested in that one to see what's the efficiency and what's the value in using virtual reality for training purposes. And I didn't necessarily get a ton of, I would like to have seen in person, but it's a neat concept. And I think it's an opportunity, especially in a small utility where we don't have the ability to expose all of our guys to everything. I mean, our collectively, our guys won't see what Ryan saw in his career. We could have 10 guys come through and they won't see what Ryan's seen. And we don't, quite frankly, we don't need to do necessarily everything that Ryan has, but there's just, he's had the opportunity to learn from a tremendous amount of experiences, and we will always be limited in our ability to do that for our, as we develop our staff. So the idea of using virtual reality is intriguing, for sure.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, from the aviation industry, it's,
Yeah.
and they train you on a simulator and you can do whatever you want. Then that way you've seen it all before you get,
Yeah.
whatever happens to you in the aircraft, you've probably seen it before.
Yeah, it turns out that I'm sure finding out for the first time 30,000 feet's a bad time.
Well, better than 3,000.
Fair point. Anything else, Ryan?
I'm all set.
All right. Generation report, Casey.
Yeah, I guess I just stand on my report.
Physically.
Can.
Thank you. I do want to highlight the IT project a little bit. It's a big undertaking. A couple of sentences don't do, a few sentences don't do justice the amount of work that's gone into it. It was a pretty significant project, and it's not quite wrapped up, but
For cybersecurity purposes, I kept it simple.
good call. It was a significant undertaking. We were IPC staff till very late into the night. I think we started at 1 or 2 that day and buttoned up about midnight or so. So appreciate your commitment, Casey, and putting up with me till midnight.
We know what the recommendation was for the insurance walkthrough, or is that also a?
No, you want to touch on the insurance recommendation a little bit?
Yeah, the insurance recommendation was switchgear testing, circuit breaker testing, protective relay testing in the generation facility. Just because we haven't done that yet. They were originally commissioned, and everything's tested. It's in a nice, clean environment. It's very little use. So usage doesn't cause any sort of, I should say the lack of usage kind of reduces that concern, or mandate for maintenance as frequently. But we are going to be collaborating with third-party vendor to have them come in and perform the testing that they recommended.
Okay, no, thanks.
And then that was the generation report. Julie, take it away, please.
So there's a lot of things listed there, I guess. The main one I want to talk about is the Public Power Week was last week. We always like to talk about it, mention that we are a public power utility, and all the great things that we celebrate with the community that the week of Public Power Week. Many of you are aware, but this week, in 2 days, we are hosting a Power Fest here outside in the parking lot a little bit, and then also in the building. We are extremely excited, nervous, and confident that we will have a good time. But it definitely is something that we have planned and planned and planned and planned for. So we are hoping our plans work as well as we have put together our great ideas together, and we're very excited. So I hope you all can make it. If not, I hope we have a great story next month about it for sure. The other thing I'll mention is I want to thank Charlie for helping me, but we're going through an extensive search for a replacement, and I know it's taken a lot of my time. A lot is probably an understatement. And Charlie has been with me and helped me through the whole process, so that's very helpful. We don't have an HR person, and Charlie and I are that H and R together.
Opposed to the H.
Depends what they stand for. When everyone is least complimentary is me.
Hey, it wouldn't be as fun, I know that.
So you're a resource, she's human. So.
Yeah, she's human, I'm a resource. Whitney tells me I don't human very well. Awesome. And the only thing I would change is while we have we have plan. The one thing that Julia's left off is they have also promoted.
Thank you.
If you have not been in a business downtown, then you have missed the fact that you cannot walk into business without seeing Leah's face, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know how much she appreciated being used in marketing materials, but turns out I knew the parents and was able to sign up for it. So no, they have done a heck of a job promoting. We had a really successful event on the showboat for Harvest Fest, and took the opportunity that almost everybody that decorated a pumpkin also walked away with postcard. I'm sure they've stopped by your business, Eric, and but they're in almost every business downtown. They're everywhere we could find places to put them. They've done an amazing job promoting this, and
Restaurants.
Yeah.
Tabletop.
Yeah, they're on tabletops. Thank you, Perry. You've helped get them. Perry's idea last month was to buy some of the little stands to put on the table, and those things have been used all over the place. So really hope it turns out great on Thursday. But it is all over the place. Every kid from Bushnell and Cherry Creek were sent home with a flyer for it. That was slightly embarrassing for my daughter.
So yeah, when they're getting taken like from sneakers, I'm always replacing them, and if they fall on the floor, putting it back up. So,
and it happens to be girls' night out for the Chambers event, so we have them stop by. It'll be a little change as well. So thank you, Julie. Move on to the manager's report. I'll encourage the board to read specifically, pay close attention to the MPPA section. That feel like is a book half the time. It's been very eventful to be expected. During my review, the power supply and MPPA related items was identified as a significant focus point. Specifically, I talk in here, one of the things I want to bring to everybody's attention is the Campbell 3 decommissioning and remediation expenses. To see the projections from approximately a year ago, they were limited in scope as far as how far out they were projecting. Fast forward a year later, and we've seen $3 million in price increases, or estimates in price increases, in expectation that will continue to grow, and that does not include new EPA rulings that will potentially drive costs up well into the future. There's a litany of legal issues and legal things that have to be worked out between consumers. This is going to be an extremely complicated process. There are 3 units on that site. MPPA is only a partial owner in one of those sites. So, when it comes to coal combustion, residual cleanup, things like that, we want to make sure that, again, we pay no more, no less than what's appropriate. We're not looking to get out of an appropriate, of carrying our responsibility, but at the same time, we're not looking to have consumers shed their expenses onto our customers. So, big step was taken in hiring essentially an owner's consultant. So MPPA has a consultant that's going to be walking with MPPA lockstep through the process. But I'd say this is something we're going to be paying very close attention to, and it's not going away anytime soon. We're expecting remediation efforts well into the next decade.
So, in that, I'm not making the assumption that, we are a small part of MPPA. So will it be, I'm assuming that it will be divided up in those percentages. We're not, it's not like,
No,
like
everything's
Lansing, we're not.
No, I don't know off the top of my head what our percentage is. Actually, no, I don't think that's in the audit. But yes, so everything is driven on a pro rata share. MPPA has I don't have MPPAs, but yeah, we have a 4.8 megawatt offtake from that. So whatever that equates to, which I think, do you have that number? Somewhere it's about 6.2. I don't have that definitive number, but yes, everything is driven by that. In MPP, one of the things that MPPA is going to be working very, very diligently at is making sure that, so we pay a portion of MPPA, a pro rata share based on MPPA's proportion. MPPA pays a pro rata share based on their overall ownership of Unit 3. Unit 3 is part of the full complex. So there's multiple steps that you have to go through, and MPPA wants to make sure that they're only having costs allocated to them that are ultimately appropriate based on their pro rata share of the Campbell 3 unit. So they've got to determine Campbell, what percentage of Campbell of the entire complex is Campbell 3. Of Campbell 3, what percentage of that is MPPA? Of MPPA's expenses, we only pay our pro rata share. So it will get whittled down. These numbers, this 8.5 million to 11.7 million, is MPPA's share, and I would have to I'd have to dig in to get our specific projections at this point. Other than that, I will correct from earlier. I mentioned I thought it was February 21st that we had to supply our renewable energy plan to the MPSC, but it's February 27th. So slight correction there. Other than that, I want to highlight the MMEA conference. It was an interesting, very interesting conference. We had a great turnout. I'll pause at the pictures a little bit. I'll get to a few things in the pictures. I don't want to step on this, I guess. I'll get through here. But it was interesting. Had a great lineup of speakers. Zach joined us for the first time. So it was a great opportunity for him to network. It's one of my favorite dinners of the year. We make it a point to have a Low Light and Power dinner out at all these conferences. So really enjoyed that. The general membership meeting was the following day. It was very interesting to hear from Ann Arbor. They are moving forward. They have a ballot initiative to form something. They're calling it a utility. I don't quite. It's a very new and different way of considering things. So it's really interesting to hear just hear an update from them, because we get asked a lot about what's Ann Arbor doing. They're making national news. They're on the national stage, and they have tremendous support from a lot of different people. Had a great presentation from Grand Haven talking about their emergency communication plan. I showed that to Craig a little bit earlier today. We'll be looking to adapt that to Lowell And then I was elected as the president of board president of MMEA, and I'll serve in that role. I was supposed to be. We got something to actually celebrate here shortly. Ryan's not going to appreciate it, but I'll do my best not to cry like I did earlier. Yeah, in front of everybody. I probably will. I can tell already.
I have the video.
We don't need to watch it. Other than that, talk about staffing. I want to highlight a little bit of the Creekside Kingdom build. It was a huge lift to have our guys out there. I really appreciate them doing that. They spent many days out there doing really difficult work. And when we thought we were done, we got one last phone call that said, "Can you come help us one more time? We can't quite see it, and we're pretty sure your guys can see it." And sure enough, they went out and that's wrong. We'll fix it. So it really went well. Obviously,
Big pile of rocks out there.
yes, oh, man, it was.
Rotary will be forever thankful.
Yeah, but if you haven't, I would say if you haven't gone out and seen the completed project, please do. It was awesome. I was able to help out a little bit. I got a workers' comp claim over my back. I don't think that works when you volunteer. No.
Do you get a percentage of your income?
I get
That's
0% zero. I get 100% zero. But no, it really was. It really was a neat experience. And then for everybody that hasn't heard, Jeremy and Raleigh took advantage of the call to head down to Florida ahead of Hurricane Milton. I still don't know about riding out a hurricane in 8-story glass windows, but no, they were down helping. I believe it's OUC, Orlando Utility Commission, maybe. Yes. Orlando's a public power community, and we tend to not get called ahead of a storm. Ryan probably has better insight than me, but ultimately, I think a lot of the contractors were tied up with Helene, and there was a little bit of fear that if it got bad, there'd be challenges finding the resources and getting the resources on site to address the issue. So I think Michigan ended up sending close to 40 or 50. They headed down with a group of about 25, and then Lansing and Traverse City sent crews down a day or two later. So really proud that they took advantage of that. And it's awesome to be volunteer to go help people that you don't know, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. S&P surveillance review. I updated the board last month. Just want to highlight that it's in your board packet under supplemental information. Welcome to review that. If you have any questions, please just reach out to me. I'd be happy to discuss that. Very, very riveting read. No, it's a short read and it's worth reviewing. It's not much. I want to highlight Jared celebrated his 2nd anniversary, progressing through his apprenticeship well, and happy to have him on board, and look forward to seeing what he's able to do with his career. I want to get into the pictures a little bit. First was just some of the social media stuff. Pretty awesome to get a little more reach with this one, but very deserving of that attention. You see some of the pictures from the Creekside Kingdom build. So I think they dug. So every one of those vertical posts was supposed to be augured out with a nice, easy auger. And Zach touches on his report. It was very challenging big. To be fair, the picture to the right doesn't do it justice. That's the only good dirt in the whole place, I think. But it happens that I talk about how bad it is, and there it is. Light and Power does have a picket out there. And then there's some fall conference, and what I'd like to highlight is, to my surprise, I was not aware of this. MMEA reached out to me and wanted to recognize Ryan. And I'll read how Katie described it, but I've got the award right here. We were able to invite Jamie in. I want to thank Julie. She had to coordinate and unfortunately I asked her to miss a very entertaining speaker. But Ryan was presented with the inaugural Make It Work Award, and the MMEA Make It Work Award is designed to recognize the staff that go above and beyond their job description, not just once, but every day. They're working quietly and expertly behind the scenes to execute the vision that makes public power work for their community. But when Katie reached out and, asked if we, what I thought was that it's a perfect person to select for this inaugural award, I really think I tried to tell the story of Ryan Payton, the wine shack on Christmas Eve. But it really does sum up Ryan's dedication to the community, to the organization. And when you say it's the guy that makes it work, really does, because it's, public power is more than just building lines and having reliable service, affordable rates. That's all important, but it's caring about the community, caring about how we're viewed, making sure that we're always painted in a good light and that we put our best foot forward. That's really what public power is about. So couldn't be more proud of Ryan. And I'm thankful that they took the opportunity to recognize him in front of his peers, because he definitely embodies what that award is meant to be. I did give him a hard time. I want to advocate that the first recipient ultimately has the award named after him. So my goal is next year they hand out the Ryan Teachworth Make It Work Award.
Get shit done. Or
GSD award. But couldn't be more proud of Ryan and all the contributions he's made to this community. Then we did our energy saving trees. What another great event. Really enjoyed it. We actually remembered to take pictures this year. Got a fun picture. That's the most expensive car we've ever put a tree through its roof. Yeah. Yeah. Let me tell you, a Porsche's sunroof does not open that far. He was a trip. The event was great. We learned a lot from last year. We trimmed down the time. But yeah, what a great opportunity. I didn't realize how much I like that picture actually with King Mung in the background. But very, very cool event. And we thought this would be our last year doing it because there's just only so many trees you can give away. But every tree was reserved in 8 days this year. Last year we had to fight a little bit to get rid of all of them, and this year they were a hot commodity.
I think realized. I think everybody's first thoughts, oh, it's going to be these little seedlings type things, and they were,
Yeah, they stick
7 foot, 8 foot.
They stick out. You can see if you scroll up just a little bit, you can see some of the trees in the background. We gave away 3 different varieties. One was more of a bush. It was that magnolia. There was a dogwood, and then there was a maple tree. So went well. It's a fun event. We came in, had a good time as a group, and gave out 100 trees. That's the manager's report.
Okay. Listing of our next meetings. Regular low-line power board meeting will be November 12th. Board comments, Andrew.
Yes, I'll start. It's just great to hear. I like being able to hear from the staff of their reports, even if they just stand on them. But the other part, it's always good to get. Yes, that's used to treat your manager report. Or next time you print it out, put a big footprint in the background. Yeah, see, there's the other good part about having staff get to hear Julie laugh.
Need to come into work, I laugh all the time.
Yeah, I think more businesses need that.
Right, have a good time.
Yeah, that's good. And on the what's the other one? The mutual aid. It was good to hear about that you had folks going down. Especially so for me, I had 4 of my employees work in Florida, and they were evacuating, or 2 sheltered in place, but 2 evacuated. One for the first hurricane got 3 inches of water across their house. Their house is at 8 feet above sea level. Then the next one, they were forecasting like 12 feet of storm surge, and it was like, oh crap. Turns out it went the other direction, so the wind didn't push the storm into the bay. They're in Tampa area, but still, then they're talking about, yeah, it could be a week or 2 without power. And so I was talking to him, it's like, well, I'm pretty sure we've got a crew down there, granted they're probably just 1 truck, but I'm sure there's a few thousand that are waiting to go in there when the storm goes through. And so it was kind of nice to feel like that we were like helping, even though I'm sure they're, unless it's very lucky that they're not the ones giving them the power, but it's kind of cool just to know that I had folks down there who are, trying to clean carpet out of their house, no power, no internet. They can't log into work. They're texting me every day just because they can't get into their computer. And but knowing that then we're sending someone down to go help power up, so it gets there that much faster. That's just pretty cool. So definitely appreciates that our guys are doing that, and they're part of that army that's trying to get all the power back on. And again, congrats to Ryan for the Ryan Teachworth Award. I mean, if you want to make the first award to somebody good, right, then I think they picked a good one to kind of be a sort of a role model, so to speak, for that award. Absolutely. So they made a good choice. Yeah. The other fun things, I was also help out a couple days at the creekside, so I get to see the holes and the rocks that came out of them. And I'm glad we were there doing that, because I can't imagine how they would have gotten those dug without light and power, to be honest. We need something big to do that. Oh yeah, I'll end on a silly fun tidbit. So we're at From looking for Halloween costumes and found light and power frisbee. It's like 25 cents. I went home. Amanda's like, what are you doing with that? I'm like, that's super. Yeah, it looks cool. I mean, it's like out on the wall somewhere. I don't know. So that was one of my fun find this time. Thanks for the longer comments, but I'm good. So
Eric.
I've enjoyed being here. It's interesting to see how you organize and review things every month. I love it, and keep up the good work. I'm impressed. A million additional to your net. That's fantastic. Good job.
Thank you. Quick addition. So Eric reminded me that there was the Harvest Hustle that I was part of. So were you? But it was kind of cool at the beginning. They said we'd like to thank our sponsors. Then a little woohoo went up when I heard Light and Power. So thanks for doing that too.
Okay, Daniel.
I would say congrats, Jared, for 2 years. And then yeah, just kind of dote on everybody. Ryan for the award. The crew for taking on some mutual aid. The Creekside volunteer time, tree giveaway volunteer time, and the Adopt the Road that you guys always do, and I always schedule, not on purpose, to be there.
It's a busy day.
But it's a lot. That's a lot of extra stuff. We're not a giant organization. That's a lot of stuff to take on while cutting down lines for ITC, you're cutting down trees for, actually, cutting down lines, maybe. Cutting down trees and keeping everything else going and keeping outages under an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and keeping them low. So it's always good to see. Just want to say appreciate it.
Craig,
Congratulations, Ryan, on your award. Talking to Charlie, you know, it's always great to see how well, you know, staff works together on things. And, you know, I just, going through the meeting and listening to Charlie, I mean, he's got a lot of moving parts here. He's, and I'm really glad he's got a great staff here that helps him keep those ports in motion. So, again, thanks to everybody who helped out with Creekside Kingdom. As a Rotary member, yeah, we are forever thankful for everything you did. I mean, Charlie's a member too, and, you know, but anyhow, being another member there, certainly appreciate that. And yeah, got a lot of good attention on the folks that went down to Florida. I reposted the Light and Power post on my Facebook page, and so many people lit up on that, and just thought it was a neat thing. So, could go on, but that's it.
You're here, that's a win.
So, yeah, the Creekside was a wonderful thing. I did not have the opportunity to participate this time around. I, being so close to the Pink Arrow and the amount of time that I dedicate to that, and then being a sole proprietor in a business that I just got swamped with so many things and just wasn't able to do that.
And totally understand.
And I know because the first one that was done, I worked on that, and again, wasn't part of Light and Power at that time, but again, they struggled back then. That knew that there's a whole lot of rocks in that area. But it's great to see Light and Power in the community doing things. I don't know if everybody gets the APPA magazine, but Lowell was featured. Charlie's picture was in there. Lisa's picture was in there. But it was, you know, when I saw Charlie's picture, then I started to read that and everything. Then I realized, you know, they're referring to something, and this article was 4 or 5 pages long.
Yeah, this was in reference to the customer service.
Yeah, I was using data, yeah. And I sent I sent the digital article out to the board. Yeah. But yeah, I forgot.
So anyway, that was a great thing to see. The congratulations to Ryan, well deserved. And just, and I know it's not something, it's in your DNA. It's not something that was looking for or what everything, but again, it's well deserved. I do have another question for you, Eric. And again, plans to be out in Denver for Halloween, so I probably will not be here for coffee with council, but I'd like to see this. So Lowell Light and Power, we started a long time ago, the A+ program, where we donate to our ratepayers, or whoever chooses pays into that, and Lowell Light and Power matches that amount. I certainly would like to see the city, to look, to think about the water and sewer, having creating some kind of, call it what you will, but like an A+ program, that, that from administers or whatever. Again, our family contributes to the A+, and it's not a lot, each month, but it's a small amount. And again, if you have 100, 200 people in the community that, does that, I just see it's not necessarily something that needs to be here, but because I got your ear, I just want you to go back and talk to the other council members and see if there's a way that you can, look at creating something like that for water and sewer, because again, I think we're, tough times. Not everybody has the wherewithal. And we're looking at, between the water and sewer in the next 6 years, doubling what it is. And so again, I'd love to see the city take on a project like that. And that's pretty much it. Well, the last thing is, I really endorse, when Charlie said that, the guys were thinking of, we got the call from mutual aid and we're thinking to see if they could, if there was a crew that would want to do that and everything. And I said, I'm all for it. And I think the rest of the board is. So it's, because, as a board, we could be saying, no, we can't afford to do that or anything, but, so they're taking their time away from their families and everything, to help, our fellow man, and woman. I guess it can't be chauvinistic, but, anyway, I'm glad that they do that, but I also am very, proud of the board that supports that and supports all these things, because again, without the board supporting it, we wouldn't have all those things. But I can't say enough about our employees, but I also, want to mention the rest of the board. Without your support, a lot of those things wouldn't be happening. So.
Can I add a couple of things before you adjourn? And not to interrupt if you're still.
No, I'm done.
A couple updates that, I meant to provide earlier. Two things that I want to touch on. The Line Shack. The Line Shack is officially closed, sold. Locks have been changed, keys have been handed over, funds are in the account. So the Line Shack is officially gone. Want to thank the council, for, apologize for not being at the council meeting when the resolution was passed. But really appreciate the council's support. Had a lot of conversations behind the scenes, just sharing some perspectives on ultimately how that can be wrapped up. And I appreciate having an audience with the council. Other thing I do want to bring to the board's attention, and I'm glad you mentioned the board's support for things like Creekside Kingdom. I don't want to gloss over the significance and the expense that we threw at Creekside Kingdom. I appreciate the board's support. What we do from an in-kind standpoint, I really try to reserve for things that we are uniquely positioned to do. If you look at the work that we do with the chamber, if you look at the work we do with Pink Arrow, Creekside Kingdom, where we are uniquely positioned to provide those services. I will say in the benevolence report, I should have brought attention to it. This is a new policy, and I'll remind the board that the policy does say that if we exceed an in-kind contribution, it's my obligation and my responsibility to make the board aware the following month, and then any future benevolence activities, once we exceed the board's, or the budget is ultimately back in the board, requires board approval. Haven't looked at necessarily where we project the end of the year, but I do want to make sure and would ask the board at a future time for there's continued support with the chamber work, because the Creekside Kingdom rebuild will eat up a significant portion of that budget. I think there's about another $1,500 that will credit against that. And if you look back at past years, what we've spent providing services to the chamber, I think there's a very, very good likelihood that we will, or there's a coin flip, I'll say, likelihood that we'll exceed that or hit that $12,000 total budget number. I will try to capture that ahead of time, but again, I think it's very important that we continue to provide that service to the chamber and continue to provide that support, because if we don't, then I honestly don't know who does it. So
Well, Creekside was a once in a generation expense.
that was my justification, is we are very much uniquely positioned to do it. It's not a reoccurring expense. Funny side note, you mentioned the first time we did this, before there were no plans to rebuild, Ron Van Overbeek was involved there. I just got here and we were talking about it. And he said, if they ever go to rebuild that thing, don't sign us up to do it. I didn't tell the guys that before I asked him. I told Ron at the time, I said, Ron, I appreciate that insight, but if we're positioned to do it, we're going to. And we did, and the guys really came through. It was a heavy lift. I don't think I was everybody's favorite person that week, but really appreciate the effort, because if we didn't do it, I don't know ultimately how it would have gotten done in the time frame that it needed to get done. So again, I appreciate the board's support, appreciate the council's support, and really glad to button up the Lion Shack, and really proud to have the opportunity to participate in Creekside Kingdom, but would ask for the board's continued support with benevolence activities. So that's all I wanted to touch on.
Okay, anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
We're adjourned. Just a second.
Yep.